I'm starting this video, I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible, to talk about what is the centre of my universe and, in a sense, the centre of your universe. And by that, I mean research. Now, as an academic, I'm required to produce research as efficiently as I can do. It's part of the measure of whether I'm successful or not, how much research I put out. For you guys, as students, whether postgraduate or undergraduate, you're in a little bit of a situation similar to mine, is that you're required, as part of your degree, to pump out a series of products, written products usually, that reflect your research work. It's a little bit different, but there's definitely some grounds of similarity. Now, I want to take you briefly into what should be, in a sense, the centre of your research universe as students. And that centre is familiar to you in a kind of way. It's Google, but it's not the normal Google. It is Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is easy enough to find by Googling it. You probably have never or rarely looked at it, but you Google Google Scholar and you get it. And I recommend creating a bookmark by right mouse clicking on your shortcuts section and creating a shortcut, whether it's in Firefox or whatever browser you use. I always use Google Chrome. Now, Google Scholar is different to Google in that it has only got, it's only an insight into a particular part of the online universe. And that part of the universe is the scholarly universe. Now, Google Scholar is encyclopedic, but a little bit of a mess as an encyclopedia. It's like a massive library, bigger than any other, that's for sure, but it's a mess. So the ability to actually poke around in Google Scholar depends on your skill, not Google Scholar's characteristics. It depends on your ability to get where you want to get to. So Google Scholar contains not just peer-reviewed journal articles, but it does give you a bit of an ability to get into book chapters, books, but also weird stuff like patents and legal findings, and also things like what we call the grey literature. Now, the grey literature is something you've got to be both wary and respectful of. Grey literature can, for example, include government reports that haven't really been peer-reviewed in the normal academic sense of the word. So we'll keep on saying the words peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed to you. Don't worry too much about what all that means. I'll show you some workarounds. But scholarly literature and grey literature is a bit different in that they go through different review processes before they get published. Government departments have their own review processes, but they're not the same as the ones we use within the academic sense. So without too much ado, I'm going to take you into Google Scholar and I'll show you a few things that I want you to be aware of. Now, first of all, I want you to be aware of these three little lines here. I believe they're called the Hamburger Lines. One of my colleagues told me this. And if you click on those Hamburger Lines, you can see a number of interesting things. First of all, I want to take you to the settings, and you should do this straight up. First of all, I'd suggest, if you are going to become a professional student, going to the Bibliography Manager and choosing EndNote. EndNote's something that you as a student can get for free, and press Save. And that's great. I'd go back into settings because there's something else I want you to do. I want you to go into library links and search for your university library. In my case, CQU. Sorry. I'll try Central Queensland University. And you'll find it comes up here. Click on anything you can get here. If you get, as I got the National Library of Australia, click on that as well. Click on your library, press Save. Now, in future, that will mean when you enter Google Scholar, you're going to get more clearer access to articles that normally you can't get through Google. Because quite often, if you just do a random search in Google, you will find stuff in there that is beyond a firewall. By doing this little click setting and pressing Save, you'll have better access to a greater range of literature. Now, your library, so in my case, CQU Library, if you click on that library link, and I'll do something separately on this later on, you can then go to a section of it called databases, and you'll find that in these databases, everything you search for is accessible, fully accessible, whereas in Google Scholar it is not. Now, why do I like Google Scholar when I've got access to CQU Library or other academic libraries? The answer is speed. Speed and comprehensiveness. When you go into any one of those databases that you see, you will actually see much, much fewer forms of literature, much more constrained. You won't see any grey literature, you won't see any patents or conference presentations to the same degree. You will be able to access everything, but you will only be able to access a very small portion of material relative to what you can get in Google Scholar. As I say, Google Scholar is like a big, massive, messy library, whereas these databases are more like a curated, small, focused library. You can get a medical database that's got focused on medical stuff. You can get a business database focused on business stuff. It's horses for courses. Why do I like Google Scholar? It's massive, but it's also quick. So let's have a look at what I mean by quick. Again, I'm just going to go straight to advanced search because I want to get to the key points here. Now, if you go to advanced search by clicking on the hamburger menu on the left-hand side, you'll see all sorts of stuff, including the exact phrase. You can also eliminate words that you don't want to get. So imagine if you were looking for Broncos and you were interested in Broncos, the horse, you could actually exclude football. So you don't get any mentions of the Broncos football team, but you only get a mention of Broncos horses by having without the words football anywhere in the article. Now eliminate that and have a look at these two options. This is brilliant. Anywhere in the article versus in the title of the article. Now, what's great about the in the title is, let's say you want to find something out about a specific area, like let's say it's student attrition or student retention. And by that we mean students staying at university or students leaving university. You could actually put the exact phrase student attrition in the title of the article. Let's leave all the elements loose, and you'll notice that every one of these articles has got the title, that exact phrase in the title, and there's 1,120 of them. Now, if you choose the right phrase or right word for this advanced search in the title, you will be on the right track. You'll immediately zoom in on a body of literature that's relevant to you. Because imagine if you were the author of one of these pieces, would you write an article about student attrition or student retention without mentioning one of those words in the title? Probably not. On the other hand, imagine if human resource development was your topic. Sorry, development. I'm blaming my keyboard in the title. To be honest, that's pretty useless. You're going to get all sorts of books on human resource development. That's such a non-focused description. That's a whole field. So you don't want to have, for example, tropical medicine as in the title, unless you're looking for a textbook on tropical medicine. So you need more focused terms. If you're going to go for the all-in title, you need more focused terms. Notice how I didn't even bother going into here anymore. I just looked at this shortcut here, all-in title. So once you become good at Google Scholar, you'll be able to hard code it rather than even using this menu system. You'll be able to hard code it. And one of the key hard codings is this bit where you use quote marks. For an exact phrase, you just put quote marks around it, these little things here, and you're in business. Now you can create two sets of human resource development, small business. And it goes from 441,000 to 25,000. So by setting a set of exact terms And if you get those terms wrong, you get the whole search term wrong. So sometimes it is good for you to go back to a big fat textbook, big introductory textbook, and look for some of the key terms that you need to zoom in your Google Scholar search. Staff retention. Now I bet if I press go now, it's going to go from 25,000 to probably less than 2. And it was less than 1. So now we're starting to get into a really good section of the literature. There's only 386, it's a lot, but that's 386 that's pretty well focused on the key thing. And you'll notice staff retention's in bold, human resource development's in bold, and small business is in bold, because these are the key terms that you hard-coded into your search. How can you limit searches like this even more? Because remember, it's a big, messy library. Your task is to try to shrink your search. When you put a search into Google Scholar and it's 55,000 results, you don't go, woohoo, 55,000. You go, oh God, that's useless. What you're looking for is a result of 100, 200 or less. A perfect search might be 20 or 30. So if you get to a stage where your result is 20 or 30, you know you're close. So how can we sharpen this up a little bit more? Let's go back to advanced search. You can do date restrictions. So a lot of lecturers and their markers say, oh, Olaf, or whatever your name is, 2 old references. Okay, well, let's deal with that. Let's make it from 2015 onwards. Now you're down to 186. And that's a clean, sensible search. You're only searching for recent or relatively recent literature. So date is one of the things you can do. You can also do really interesting things by setting, a range of dates. But let's just say that you just want young literature. You just put whatever date you want there, and that will restrict it. There's another trick that I often use, is if I only want journal articles, almost every journal in the world has got the word journal in the heading. So I actually just stick in there the word journal. And let me just do that search again, and let's go with that. We're down to 32 results. Now, there are some journals, such as Human Resource Development. That's a journal that doesn't have the word journal in it. So it's not a perfect solution, but these are kind of rough and ready measures of shortening and shrinking your searches. Now there's a few more things we can do, and I'm just going to undo the date restriction, and I'm also going to undo the journal restriction, and we'll do this big search that's got 386. Now there's another trick, a couple of tricks that I want to quickly show you here. First of all, cited by, cited by, cited by. Now Google has certain metrics built in where it favors heavily cited articles. What are heavily cited articles? They're articles that are cited by other books and journals inside Google Scholar, inside this massive library. It looks at who cited this one. 412 other people, other scholars or other groups of scholars have cited this one. This is heavily cited, to use the language that we use in our world. 412 is great. This one's been cited by 96. It's still great. You'll notice some of the ones down here have been cited by 2 or none. So one of the questions that you are asked as students is, can you at least include 10, 20, 30 good quality references? And we might even add to that peer-reviewed journals, only peer-reviewed journals or book chapters. We might say something like that to you. Now, you can do that in your Google, in your CQ library or your other academic library quite easily by clicking a little button there in the search that says peer-reviewed only. But within Google Scholar, you don't have that capacity. But I can give you a quick, rough and ready solution here. If you cite something that's been cited at least 10 or 15 times, you're on safe ground. You're on safe ground because we as a community, we professional researchers kind of have that knowledge of what's a good reference and not a good reference. And we don't reference bad references, okay? So we actually will only reference relatively good references from good journals. So you'll see those numbers start to tick up. Now, if an article's been written since 2021, which is very recent, you'll notice none of them have actually had time to get cited. So this particular short rule of thumb doesn't work with fresh literature, new literature. So, but it does work with something that's 3 or 4 years old. As a metric, that metric cited by is a useful measure of quality, of importance, of peer-reviewed nature, because 412 people must have reviewed this article to the degree that they could cite it and get it published in another article. There's one other trick that I quickly want to show you, but the shortening measures is this use of careful quotes, picking good keywords, just throwing random words in, human resource development, almost writing your assignment question up in here. It's pretty useless. You need to, first of all, before you start this search, you need to become pretty familiar with what it is you're searching by reading 1 or 2 summary articles about it, finding out what the keywords are, and then moving from there. So how do you do that? First of all, if you've got an introductory textbook in the field, whatever your field is, that's a great place to learn some of the keywords, some of the jargon that you can then stick into Google Scholar and use. Don't just use ordinary English. You need to use the technical English that is associated with your field. If we go back to advanced, now imagine if your general field was student retention. Now, I'm going to just put that without quote marks for a minute. And I'm also going to put the word review in here. And I'm going to put it in the title. Let's see what happens when we do that. Now, what happens if that's a broad enough term, not too narrow, you're going to find someone's written a review article about it. And review articles are like mini textbooks that cover a particular field, and you want it to be broad enough to cover the field that you're precisely focusing on. By putting the word review in it and in the title, the reality is that almost every review that ever gets published has the word review in the title, whether it's a systematic review, a scoping review, a meta-analytic review, or whatever. There's many different kinds of flavors of review, but almost all of them have the word review in it. And here you get a whole series of articles about student retention that are reviews. Pick one or two relatively recent ones, read up on it, and you'll be able to find a set of terms, keywords, jargon that you can then use to do further searches in Google. Or if you read 4 or 5 of them, you may well find enough material to simply finish your little research project that you're doing, your article, your report that you're doing for uni. All right, before I finish, because I didn't want to keep this short, I did want to show you one final trick, and that is this. Under the settings, I showed you, show the links to important citations. It is one of the most important things in my life, and for you guys as students, it's one of the things that represents a lot of marks for you, is referencing and doing referencing correctly. You'll notice that each one of these, if you do what I just did, will have underneath whatever search you do, there's going to be this little hyperlink here, import into EndNote, import into EndNote. I won't explain this in full, I'll do that maybe some other time. But the reality is that if you click on that, it will import the reference to this particular article into a piece of software called EndNote, and you can then use that in your assignment writing really quickly to organize and get your settings, get your formulas, get your formatting correct for your referencing. But there's another thing you can do here that's really quick, is click on that. You'll notice there's common styles here: APA, Harvard, Vancouver, Chicago. Now, word of warning, this is a rough and ready library. Google Scholar. It's not perfect. It's also free, and it's not very well resourced. It's probably run by robots, to be perfectly honest. So this is only as good as the garbage that goes in. If garbage in, garbage out. We say that in computing, but it's also true in every form of life. So if the reference has been entered properly in the first place, and in this case it has been, that is pretty well close to perfect APA style. And I'm guessing it's pretty well close to perfect Chicago, etc. as well. I'm familiar with APA because my background is psychology. APA stands for American Psychological Association. So be wary that these aren't perfect, but for a lot of purposes, they're close to perfect. So you could actually just copy that and then paste it in your assignment, in your reference list. I recommend becoming familiar with the referencing style so you can fix this stuff up either in EndNote or manually. I think that's the main things that I wanted to have a look at. You may actually, let's say you find a beautiful article that is a bit old, like that one, 51 references, 51 citations, so that's pretty good. This is just an example of what you can do. Imagine if you find that a perfect article and perfect topic, but it's a little bit old. You can also click on the Cited button, and you can do a search by clicking on that. You can search within that for something a little bit more focused, like if you want to find an article that's got Australia in it, then you can do a search within a search and find articles that might have a reference to Australia. Now, in summary, can I say that Google Scholar is brilliant in its bigness, brilliant in the speed with which it will get to the point quickly, also brilliant in finding stuff that you cannot find in any other database. And when I referred to the grey literature earlier, I did it somewhat dismissively, but let me say that some of the best quality hidden gems in my world are produced by the Department of Defense, by the CSIRO, by industry think tanks and non-profits, etc. And they produce complex, difficult, precise, well-done research that you won't find in other databases. So that's one of the reasons I like Google Scholar. You'll like it because it's big. There's no chance of finding nothing. If you do a correct search, you'll always find something because the world is really big. When it's in Google Scholar, that's a big library. And then finally, it's the speed with which you can get through your work in Google Scholar. And speed is really important for you as a student. Look, I hope this little video helps. And I may well do a follow-up one on some more advanced techniques at some stage. Thank you.